Hello, everybody, and welcome to a lesson about the low cost revolution. That is a revolution in low cost airlines. That is, if there's a possibility to travel cheap and to travel very easily and take vacation all the time, well, there is also a dark side, because if low cost airlines have revolutionized the way we fly, there are clearly dark aspects and various problems beneath the veneer of glittering dreams of a quick holiday in previously elusive distant lands. It's a fact that companies like EasyJet are moving more passenger than Alitalia or most of the other national airlines company. Budget airlines are thriving by making their planes and their staff work harder. So you can see from the beginning that there is a problem about the staff. I mean, usually the flight attendants are overworked. So you can see in the list here basically the pros and cons of traveling. This is just a non-comprehensive list. You can add the one that you actually feel about this problem. For example, in the pros section, we have you can experience more of the world than before. That is true. You can travel to distant places that were previously unreachable. You can have new jobs, okay, because new jobs can be created in places outside the airport, boosting the local economy. When there is the creation of an airport, there are jobs connected to this airport, a lot of jobs in most of the times. Then you have air travel is no more reserved for the elite. It means that you can travel without spending too much money. I mean, it's affordable. You can get to foreign and faraway locations for the same price as a local destination in your country. That is true. If you spend something like 60 euros or I don't know 70 English pound, etc., you can get with the same price. You can get basically to a different location just with the train. So, but this time you're traveling with the airplane. So it's very different because you can go to abroad to another state instead of just moving in your own country. These companies don't receive government subsidies. Okay, they public money. That is that these companies are private entities. So when they are in trouble, technically the government is not forced to intervene and give them money. Like for example, when it happened for Alitalia, but it happened for British Airways and Lufthansa. So it's the same thing. Whenever there's a national company has problems because of the very bad decision of a very bad management, usually the state has to actually give public money to save this company. But in this case, in the case of low-cost airlines, they are private entities, so the state is not involved. Then there are the cons. I mean, everything that is contrary, everything that creates problem. For example, air travel has lost most of its glamour because when you're traveling these low-cost airlines, you lost a lot of the glamour that you had when you were traveling 20 years ago, when you paid a high price, but at the same time you received this satisfaction of traveling with an airplane. Passengers sometimes are forced to fly in tight seats with no room because the jet or the airplanes that are used in these low cost companies are smaller than the other ones. So you are forced to travel very close to other passenger. There is not that much room. Then no refunding policy included in the base fare price. I mean the base price of the ticket does not include a refund in case of problems included with your own delays in the flight or a problem with the weather. So if there is rain or some turbulence or something like that, there is no refund unless you paid before. You pay some extra charge to have a refund in case of problems in the future, but it's not included in the base fare. So you are taking a risk, because if at the last moment your flight will be or delayed or cancelled, suppressed, cancelled totally, you will lose your money. There is no obligation on part of the company to actually refund you, to give you back your money, basically. So nothing is free. When you're flying in the airplane, you have to pay for everything. There is no food, no water. You have to buy everything. And of course, when you are in the airport, in the security steps you take to get to the flight, every bottle of water that you have will be basically taken away from you. You have to buy something new. Airports are usually inconveniently far away, especially we see in the situation here in Italy, for example, when you travel to Milano Malpensa. It's kind of very far even from the central station in Milan. You have to take the train or the bus, or the other one, which is even cheaper, Oro al Serio. It's much inconvenient because it's too far away from the cities. Okay, then you have pilots and other personnel are overworked. Cioè il personale, okay, the personnel is overworked. Okay, pilots and other personnel. Flight can be easily cancelled. And you see, when this company, they have a policy of canceling your flight. It's up to them, basically. So when you're flying with this company, you encounter a lot of problems. There are pros and cons. One important historical moment happened when Ryanair was losing money because there were too many expenses, but Tony Ryan, the owner and founder of the company, hoped that the regulation, which had helped American aviation, will soon come to Europe. So basically there were some problems with the aviation and deregulation. That means there's this kind of giving up to the rules, basically letting the private sector regulate itself, which is called deregulation. So there is no direct intervention of the government, of the state, but technically or hypothetically or hopefully the market will actually take care of itself. So every company will actually compete and there will be some kind of rules regulated by the market itself, which is kind of a very naive perspective, but that's what it was. The regulation means there are no technical regulation from the state in this case. So the private company can be more free to actually enter the market. This was happening in the American aviation, but and this would actually they were thinking that this would actually come to Europe. It came, so there were some things that this company were doing that they were not supposed to do if they wanted to make money. So in the beginning, the companies like British Airways or Alitalia, for example, or Lufthansa, or KLM, the Dutch company, were doing some things they were not supposed to do if they wanted to actually make money. For example, to change the situation, they will have to let passengers choose their seat on the plane because the plane was not supposed to be a bus. Now it's quite normal to actually having to choose your own place, but in the beginning you did get on the plane and you choose your place just like a normal bus. So now you have to choose and pay a little extra money for that. They had to stop serving full meals, but offer just drinks and snacks. So when you actually fly in first class in a long distance trip, you have a complimentary meal that is a meal that can be a lunch or dinner if it's too late, if it's offered to you, because it's included in the price of the ticket. And they stopped to do that. The low-cost company, they're actually doing something very different. They give you snacks. So actually you have to actually pay on when you're flying because if you want to eat something while you're flying. They had to use their crews and planes on multiple flights per day. That's kind of normal when you have a flight or a plane that is starting in Italy, goes to Amsterdam, stays there, and then comes back. The same plane. Just after an hour, it just comes back and goes back and forth. This is also typical, for example, of the trains in the French TGV. But it was unusual for airplanes. So basically, in the 70s and in the 80s, used to be that one plane just did one route. And that's it. But now the low-cost company are actually exploiting, using the same flight for multiple flights per day. So it's a back and forth. It's like a normal bus. It's more like a bus than a plane. And finally, they had to offer drastically cheaper tickets. So the tickets are cheaper. That's why Stelios Ajayonou, the founder of EasyJet, who was less interested in planes than in selling tickets, had a theory which he called the ignition price. This theory involved the ignition, quindi inizio in italiano, quindi accensione, price, the ignition price of tickets, and if you could get your price down to the lowest possible, the market will explode. Basically, this theory means that the more you lower basically the price of a ticket, then it will go down, and the rest of the companies will actually follow this lowering of the price. So it's kind of a risky move because you have to lose money in the beginning, because if you lower your ticket price, you will actually lose money. But then you will recoup Okay, recoup means recover. You will recover this money through the sales, because more people will buy. If it's cheaper, more people will buy and you will recover. And the other companies will have no choice but to actually follow you and lower their price too. This theory was common practice in other retail markets, but not in the airline business. So basically, this theory was actually in use in other markets, for example, in supermarkets. But it was quite uncommon in the airline business. Then we have this chapter which is called Pantone 021C, which is the orange, the color of EasyJet color, the EasyJet distinctive color. So in 2014, EasyJet, the company with the most shocking vivid shade of orange possible, as part of the very provocative and aggressive image, carried more than 65 million passengers, making it the second largest budget airline in Europe by number of passengers carried, behind Ryanair. So these are the two main competitors, the Ryanair and EasyJet. They are competing to be the best, or the airline that carries the most passenger, and they basically almost succeeded that. The original idea of Stelios was to sell tickets directly to customer through their call center without travel agents getting hefty slices of the profits, saving almost up to 20%. So this is a kind of revolution in the market, because instead of having the travel agent that gets his own percentage of money, you sell directly to your client. Nowadays, it's kind of a common, because if you go to the Alitalia website or the Lufthansa website, you can buy tickets from them, because everybody now has a smartphone and can go to the internet. But in the 80s, in the 90s, on the 2000, it was kind of a novelty, because you didn't have to go to the travel agency. You just phone them. You could just phone EasyJet and you can get your ticket at a reasonable price without the fee, the percentage of the money that you had to give to the travel agent. The attitude of passengers has changed, because you can go, for example, to Malaga or Prague at the same price you will have to pay to go to Manchester from London, or to go from Milan to Rome with the same price of the ticket from Rome to Milan. You can go to any other destination, for example, in Spain to Malaga or to Paris with the same price. Is it competing even with the train in this case? For the passenger, the destination doesn't really matter. As long as the price is low, they are willing to go to location that they barely knew existed before. And that's true, because when you go to their website, they give you some special offer, some very tempting offer, about €60 to go, for example, to a place in Spain, which is not Barcelona, is not Madrid, so not the capital and not very famous tourist attraction, but places that are on the sea. So you could actually tell yourself, wait, why not? It's just €60. The hotel is not that expensive. Maybe I can go there just for a weekend. It's not very expensive. Who cares if it's not Madrid, if it's not Paris or London? It's still going abroad. It's still going to Spain, going to France, and I can do that. I can afford that. So that's the revolution. That's the mentality, because people are going to places that they didn't know existed, because they never considered going there because it was expensive. But now that it's cheaper, you can go there. It doesn't matter if it's not a fancy place like Barcelona, London, etc. One of the strategies used by the low-fare airline is to have companies pay for the privilege of selling their products on planes. For example, orange juice or electronic products. These companies are willing to pay just to have a chance to get their product into the new markets. Into new markets. For example, if you want to sell orange juice, you will actually have the opportunity to go to place your product in an EasyJet airplane. People will actually use your product, and you will get an access to this new market. So you're willing to pay. In the beginning, company was just giving the product for free. I mean, they gave EasyJet orange juice and other products for free. Then EasyJet became sort of greedy. They just got wiser. I mean, they decided to actually make company pay. And the companies are willing to pay, because this is a huge share of their profit. It's a new market. They are not willing to give up so easily, so they are paying. One other strategy is to always fly with full planes. Differently from national companies like Alitalia or Lufthansa, it is inconceivable to leave a few empty seats. So basically, they are always making their planes fly completely full. Instead of Lufthansa or Alitalia, they are actually having their planes half empty, basically. So for low-cost airline, this is inconceivable. This is considered a total waste of money and resources. That's why there are last-minute offers, which today are part of the offer in the international market. And you don't even need to translate last-minute. For example, in Italian, when you see a last-minute offer, that means that you are actually going on a plane. You don't even need to translate that in Italian, because everybody knows that you are probably talking about a trip on a flying pub, because basically these jet or these planes are small, they're smaller than the other ones, and everybody's eating or drinking, so they are kind of like a flying pub or like a flying bar, whatever, where everything is cheap, but a little dehumanizing and uncomfortable for the customer, because you're cramped. You're next to the person sitting next to you, so and he's eating, you're eating, there's noise, sometimes you're close to the bathroom, so people are going back and forth to the bathroom, and you're just there sitting watching them because your seat is there. So sometimes it's very, I don't know, dehumanizing. The rival companies such as British Airways started to notice these low-cost airlines, so they decided to create their own low-fare airlines. So Go, for example, was British Airways' new budget line. Budget means that you don't have to spend that much money, which was immediately targeted by Stelios, who sued British Airways, accusing them of copying their business model. So they were sued. So lawyers, tribunals, and trials were involved, because EasyJet was attacked in that part of the market which was theirs, the low-cost market, basically normal people buying cheaper flights, and the British Airways tried to insert itself in this market, and immediately they tried to have lawyers from stop them, and they sued. Basically, they were accused of copying their business model, because technically they were kind of copying the model. In the end, Go, the low-cost company from British Airways, was sold on the market. So it was not profitable, and it was sold, and it was poked back by none other than EasyJet itself. So basically, EasyJet eliminated the another rival company. So that's kind of unfair, because there is no competition now. But technically, these low-cost airlines from the British Airways was bought. This is being the fact that this company was sold is kind of a danger, because the market is being deprived. Okay, EasyJet depriving the national and international market of the choice and diversity needed. So there is no choice for the customer. Okay, Michael O'Reilly, the biggest shareholder of Ryanair, has always used a controversy instead of advertisement. So Michael O'Reilly is basically the guy that actually bought from Mr. Ryan, the company. So Michael O'Reilly is now the owner, the shareholder. It means that he has the highest percentage of shares in the company. He's very media savvy. It means that he knows everything about the media, the internet, and how to manipulate public relationship. So he knows how to provoke and, to a certain extent, manipulate the journalists who will report anything he says. It's very controversial, because he knows that journalists will report anything that he says. So sometimes he says very bold things. For example, like when he boasted that he wanted to charge extra for people who were fat, which is kind of unfair, very unpolite, to actually making people that are fat, you make them pay more money because they take more space. So it's kind of unfair. Or to put porn on the aircraft. He wanted to. This was just a provocation, of course. But he said he wanted to have porn on the aircraft, which is kind of impossible. It creates a lot of problem. But this one's just a provocation, no? Or he wanted to charge extra for using the toilet, for example, on the plane. So if you are flying and you want to go to the toilet, you have to pay more money. So it's kind of controversial. It's all part of the big public relations strategy that Mr. Michael O'Leary has. So the message is not as important as the controversy, using anything from sex to religion to capture the attention. And in the end, it all works out, creating free publicity for a company that doesn't even have an advertising agency in order, again, to be in charge of their strategy and also to cut costs. So basically, they manage their own advertising company, or they manage the adverts. They don't have an agency, an external entity that have to be paid. No, they don't have to pay anybody because they manage every advertisement themselves. They create. You can see some picture have Michael O'Leary himself in the picture. So they're kind of created like that, and they cut every possible cost. The attitude is also reflected on potentially wrong commercial practices when EasyJet, Ryanair, and other companies were fined by Italy antitrust regulator for not offering refunds for passengers. So there were a problem because they didn't offer refund for the flights. Those flights were cancelled, citing the coronavirus imposed limits or the outbreak. As it turns out, what really happened is that the cancelled flights were outside the periods in which the government had imposed limits on movement between countries, and that refunds of the tickets, an option envisaged by European rules, should have been offered. So they try to cheat the market by not refunding people, denying them their rights, because according to European rules they had a right to be refunded, to give them money back, but they tried to use the corona outbreak to not to refund the people. So this is one part of the aggressive strategy that they have. Sometimes they go outside the law. This is the problem, because they at a certain point this aggression becomes illegal. Because if the European rules are state that you have to refund, if you want to operate in Europe, you have to refund. There is no way around it. So you may think that the flight crew, being a flight crew or being a stewardess, is kind of a fancy. It's a very good job for certain aspects, but it's a nightmare for certain others. For example, you may think that being a steward or stewardess is glamorous, that it's a sweet gig and you get paid to travel the world. But the reality is quite different. The flight attendants for Fly Emirates, for example, average long distance flight average a lot of distant flight every month. For example, that means that a father or a mother sees his or her family for 4 days a month, because every long distance flight entails staying in hotels overnight, which is called layover. When you actually travel to a country, you have to stay there and go back the next day, or the very next day, or the day after that. And most of the times, a person can come home only after a week. So you will see your family after a week with his or her biological clock completely reversed. Because if you are going to Singapore, you arrive there, you're supposed to be night, but there is still the day. So your biological clock is completely reversed. And moreover, the flight schedule changes frequently, so you cannot program your life. For this long distance flight, the flight crew stays on his feet long hours, sometimes even 11 hours on your feet, because you're walking back and forth, and this is physically demanding, especially when you are not young anymore. So this going around the world and traveling could be very fanciful when you're young, but when you're over 40, it's kind of difficult to maintain this level of physical performance.